Yashoda here with West Coast Yoga. Welcome to morning class. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, text number 6, which reads as follows. Rishaya uvacha tvaya kalu puranam seti hasanam chanjaga akyatyantyapi adhyanti Dharma Shastrani Yantyata. Translation. The sages said, Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. We're going to read a few paragraphs of Srila Prabhupada's purport for good measure. Srila Prabhupada's purport. A Goswami, or the bona fide representative of Sri Vyasadeva, must be free from all kinds of vices. The 4 major vices of Kali Yuga are illicit connection with women, animal slaughter, intoxication, and speculative gambling of all sorts. A Goswami must be free from all these vices before he can dare sit on the Vyasasana. No one should be allowed to sit on the Vyasasana who is not spotless in character and who is not freed from the above-mentioned vices. He not only should be freed from all such vices, but must also be well-versed in all revealed scriptures or in the Vedas. The Puranas are also parts of the Vedas, and histories like the Mahabharata or Ramayana are also parts of the Vedas. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangunangayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dina Tarinam. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita 4 types of people who are dear to him. And of the 4, you have the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and one who is searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. Of the 4, the person searching for knowledge of the absolute truth is considered most dear because they are more or less already on the Brahminical platform. And Krishna is celebrated as Go Brahmanya Hitaya Cha. He's very dear to the Brahmins, he's very dear to the cows, always promoting the protection of these different classes. In this way, when living entities participate in the Brahminical culture and they purify their nature, they become immensely benefited. Not only do they benefit themselves, but they're able to benefit others. And this is explained in the verse, Chitatmana Prashantasya. Chitatmana means one who has conquered their self. First and foremost, they are prashanti, means supermost peaceful. They have discovered the limit of peace, like a tranquil lake. There are no ripples. It's very transparent. So Jitatmana Prashantasya. The next step is Paramatma Samahita. Because of this calmness that's reflected in the heart, now they can actually see the true contents of their heart. And that is Paramatma, the indwelling supersoul with 4 arms, holding his celebrated weapons, Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma. The lotus flower in the hand of the Lord is a clear reference to the goddess of fortune, who is so dear to the Lord, always by his side, and very pleasing. The conch in the Lord's hand resembles a swan, and the swan is always searching for nectar. So in the Lord's hand, the conch appears like the face of a bird with a pink beak, also very dear to the devotees. The Lord's conch is named Shankachud. Then you have the other 2 items. You have the chakra, what's known as Hari Chakra, the wheel of time, always turning. All living entities inherently fear this wheel of time, but in truth, it can only deal damage to the non-devotees. It supports the devotees, and it inflicts punishment upon the non-devotees. And finally, you have the Shanka, Chakra, Gada, Padma, the club. The Lord's club is called Komodaki, and although its natural color is golden, it has become reddish, smeared with the blood of the demons. Now the peaceful devotee, having conquered their nature, can see the Lord seated in their heart in a very peaceful state. And now the stages of their realization develop further. Shitoshna Sukaduke Shu Tatamana Pamanayo. What this is referring to is the changing of the seasons. The self-realized devotee is in a neutral state. Their interaction with the modes of nature is just like that of the Lord, simply a witness. They're witnessing the movement of the material energy without unnecessarily identifying with it. And so you have the Shita and the Ushna. You have the winter, you have the summer, the different seasons. Ordinarily, the changing of the seasons can be a cause of, let's say, discomfort for the living entity, freezing cold, burning heat. But the self-realized soul is indifferent to these things, as well as fame and infamy. Sometimes we are praised, sometimes we are insulted, but the pure devotee is aloof. And this is the true standard of self-realization. Who is not becoming agitated, even in the presence of provocative behavior? Once the great sages in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there was a group of sages who wished to perform an experiment in determining the nature of the absolute truth. And among them, one of the sages was promoted as kind of a scientist to conduct an experiment. In American history, there are many such scientists who actually die in the course of their research, trying to promote the good cause. Similarly, this sage was willing to experiment. And what was the nature of that experiment? He wanted to figure out which deity of the three divinities, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, he wanted to determine which one is supermost, most super excellent, and who is Bhagavan, the source. And his method of testing was through provocation. There are three forms of provocation. The first, which is the least offensive, is mental. I may have so many mental disturbances, but that is the least amount I can provoke someone through some kind of a mental agitation. The next level is verbal, throwing insults. When a quarreling party begin throwing insults, things can escalate very quickly. And the supermost provocative activity is called corporal, or physical, actually inflicting physical harm. So this sage, he intended to test to figure out the divinity by provocation, which kind of sounds like a kamikaze mission, but anyway, that was his method. So he traveled first to the planet of Lord Brahma. The sage happened to be one of the sons of Lord Brahma. And when he arrived, the Lord Brahma received him very affectionately, as a father would. And the sage simply stood there like a statue with no emotional response. And this was offensive. And Brahma was provoked. But somehow, due to his high nature, he was able to curtail his anger somehow or another, and then he resumed his usual business. Okay, so Brahma showed symptoms of provocation. He is not the supreme. Next, the sage traveled to the planet of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva lives in this mystical forest under a banyan tree. He's engaged in penance and austerity. At that time, the sage arrived, and he happened to be the brother of Lord Shiva. And Shiva approached him affectionately, trying to give him a hug. And he said, "Oh, you dirty fellow, you have snakes in your hair. You've been rolling around in the crematorium ashes. You are always associated by the hobgoblins and the demons. I want nothing to do with you. Go take a shower." When Shiva heard these words of provocation, he became greatly angry, and he immediately summoned his trident to kill the sage. But Parvati appeared on the scene and said, "My lord, He's just testing you, testing. Let it pass. It's not very serious. So somehow the sage was not killed. Okay, Shiva was provoked. He's not the supreme. Finally, the sage arrived all the way in a place called Shvetadvip. Shvetadvip is the localized Vaikuntha. It is an eternal spiritual planet within our own universe. And the sage arrived finding Lord Vishnu reclining on his serpent bed Ananta, being massaged by the goddess of fortune, and his eyes were half open. Now the sage has to engage the most intense form of provocation, which is physical. So using his foot, he kicked the Lord's chest as hard as he could with one good kick. And the Lord kind of was startled and said, "My dear sage, your foot is just like a soft flower. My chest is just like a hard stone. Have I injured your poor foot with my hard chest? Let me give it one massage." And so he began to massage the sage's foot. And the sage was immediately in deep realization, oh yes, Vishnu is the supreme person. He cannot be provoked under any circumstances. So very quickly the sage left to report his findings back at the forest where the other sages were gathered. Unfortunately, the goddess of fortune was not so ecstatic, having seen her lord and master kicked insultingly by some Brahmin. And so from that day forward, she cursed the Brahmins that they will be dirt poor. And this is actually our personal experience. So the sage returned to the banks of the river and reported his findings. And now they all engaged in prolonged austerity and meditation upon Lord Vishnu, and they became immortal. We can take a cue from these activities that Vishnu is the unmoved and unshaken. He's the resting place of everything. He's the resting place of the eternal abode, what to speak of this temporary manifestation. If we can place our mind and our faith in this immovable, all-powerful energy, then we'll be in the same category as the great sages and the great saintly persons. And isn't that why we go to the temple? We go to the temple so that we can manifest the best part of our person. The best part of us is manifest in the company of great saints and sages. And we like to try and invoke that energy, the higher vibration, what is called Aladini Shakti. The nature of Aladini Shakti is that she's able to attract the Lord's attention and magnify the servant's effort. Even insignificant service, when it is amplified by Aladini Shakti, can become very attractive to the Lord. So our method of approach is to first invoke the causeless mercy of the Lord's internal energy, Radharani, or more specifically, Hare. Hare is an address to Radharani, but it's done in the invocative form. Invocative suggests two things. The first thing is urgency. When a child cries for his mother, there's a sense of urgency. There's no formality. The child doesn't say, "Mother, mother." It says, "Ma, ma." Yeah, invocative address. What it also denotes is intimacy. So when we approach God, we do it with urgency and with intimacy. And this is most efficiently done through the Lord's internal energy. She makes the whole thing work. So thank you for joining us for class. As always, I'm Yashoda with West Coast Yoga. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.